In the record industry, winning a Grammy is considered to be the pinnacle of success. No one was able to protect Petula Clark from the men who dominated her career, but her voice rescued millions during World War II. She endured decades of rejection, harassment, and infidelity. She was sinking in depression while her songs brought delight to the listeners. The weight of secrets she was unable to disclose caused her marriage to fail. At 90 years old, she nearly lost the voice that brought her fame in 2023. The lady who made the world a happier place fought fights no one knew about for her whole life. The reality is terrible. In Ule, Sorry, on November 15, 1932, Petula Clark was born as Sally Olwyn Clark. She was raised in a modest house close to Longrove Hospital, where both of her parents were nurses. The Great Depression weighed heavily on all the families in their immediate vicinity, and money was limited. Petula assisted with household tasks, with siblings, and occasionally even with patients. Though it progressed slowly, life had a purpose. Long before anyone knew her name, her peaceful perspective on the world found its way into her voice, and those formative years taught her how to care for others. There was a fun side to her father. He once combined the names of two former girlfriends, Pet and Oula, to create Petula. It sounded happy, he thought, at a time when most families needed something to be happy about. She eventually verified the tale personally, and it consistently demonstrated how her family used creativity to get through difficult times. As soon as Petula was able to speak, her mother, Doris, who was a trained soprano, became aware of something in her voice. By the age of 5, Petula began learning folk tunes and performing them at family get-togethers, such as Mighty Lack and A Rose. The place she stood in was warmed by her voice, while the outside world was chilly and unsure. She gained confidence one small moment at a time from these minor performances. At the age of 7, everything changed. She imitated well-known radio singers like Vera Lynn in 1939 while standing on a little stage. Instructors immediately noticed. They advised her to press on. A bright-voiced toddler seemed like a startling ray of optimism as Britain drifted into war. That moment opened doors. She began giving more frequent performances, consoling both military personnel and listeners at home. At home, things were basic. Hospital shifts dictated the family's daily schedule. Petula observed her parents bringing compassion to their work and to everyone in their vicinity. That molded her. She stabilized as a result. Despite her increased radio visibility, she continued to be the girl who washed tables, helped with dishes, and patiently listened to others. Her actions were all characterized by empathy. By 1939, she was using her father's old gramophone to covertly record her own tiny demos. Whispering songs over the crackling speaker, she practiced mimicking Shirley Temple and other celebrities. When her parents learned, they only grinned and allowed her continue. Despite the growing stress of the conflict, it was harmless and brought her joy. Then came the life-altering night. At the age of 9, she performed Mighty Lack a Rose on the BBC Empire service for a show called It's All Yours on October 17, 1942. Her uncle was serving in Iraq, and she dedicated it to him. It was a weary nation. Through the darkness, air raid sirens shrieked. But in the midst of the pandemonium, her tiny voice felt like a moment of peace. After that, the BBC received hundreds more letters. She was described as comforting. They requested to hear her sing again, and she did, even when raids were taking place, and she sang for kids who were underground. By the end of 1942, she was making weekly appearances on BBC Radio. She was soon dubbed Mary Mimic on radio and Shirley Temple in Britain. She gave a performance at the Queensberry All Services Club, now the Prince Edward Theatre, on December 20, 1942. Over 500 soldiers observed her. They laughed when she sung patriotic tunes. Even at the age of 10, she was aware of how much relief was needed. She also performed at more than 500 ENSA concerts before to turning 12. She visited soldiers and evacuated children while riding trains through blackout zones. She performed during raids despite the surrounding walls rattling from German Von rockets. She kept going. She started hosting her own BBC program, Pet's Parlour, at the age of 10. She read letters from families, sang, conducted interviews with soldiers, and modified lyrics for unique requests. She attempted to cheer someone up once a week. From all across the world, thousands of messages arrived. She knew how to make others feel seen even at that age. Her popularity on radio led to a movie. She made an appearance in Medal for the General in 1944. She sang, "I'm going to be a lucky girl like a street kid." When the film debuted, air raids were still occurring in the city. Her sincerity and honesty won her accolades from critics. This part gave her access to the film industry even at such a young age, and she continued to progress in it. At the age of 8, she performed in bomb shelters during the Blitz. She would sing "White Cliffs of Dover" to soothe the trembling families when Von rockets crashed. Something strong was developed inside her by her bravery. She carried that with her throughout her entire life. But things changed immediately following the war. Just a few weeks after VE Day, in May 1945, the BBC fired her. Her age was 13. They referred to her as a novelty of the conflict. They said that child vocalists were no longer necessary. The rejection was painful. She went to secretarial school and quietly tried out for West End parts for the next 2 years, avoiding the limelight. She repeatedly faced rejection. Not the correct type, too young. The world was unsure of how to handle her now that the glitter of war had faded. Still, she continued on. Her filmmaking continued even throughout that trying time. Music. She had filmed "I Know Where I'm Going" about the age of 12. It was filmed amid one of the coldest winters ever recorded in the Scottish Hebrides. On isolated islands, music, persevered through long days, rain, and icy winds. Everyone was surprised by her discipline. Her signature was that professionalism. Next was Strawberry Roan. Despite never having ridden a horse herself, she portrayed a girl who adored them in 1945. For weeks, she prepared for her scenes by learning how to ride horses. Despite the film's meager £10,000 in budget, her performance was exceptional. Her emotional honesty and natural on-screen presence were praised by critics. She was gradually demonstrating her versatility. She has nuanced acting skills. By music. 1949, she had made 14 film appearances. Even though she was still a teenager, British households were already familiar with her. Her 1948 appearance in the early television series Here Come the Huggets was one of her most well-known roles. She portrayed a smart adolescent from a working-class household. Because the program felt familiar, families enjoyed it. Additionally, Petula's charisma made her memorable. The Huggets helped her transition from radio to movies to television, and made British viewers happy for 3 years. She signed her first recording deal with EMI Columbia at the age of 16. Although I Can't Give You Anything But Love, her first single, didn't make it to the charts, she did meet producer George Martin, who would go on to influence the Beatles' sound. She recalled being anxious in the studio, but he assisted her in calming down and finding her voice. The seeds of a long musical career were sown in that early session. The darker aspects of the industry, however, did not spare her path. At the age of 15, her agent encouraged her to take on provocative modeling gigs in 1947 in an attempt to increase her notoriety. All offers were turned down by her. People disagreed with her, claiming that music would advance her career, but she persisted. Respect was what she desired. At a period when many young performers were being taken advantage of, she was safeguarded by that clear decision. It demonstrated her already existing strength. At the age of 17, Petula Clark made her debut in 1954 with a song that seemed innocent and fun, but it catapulted her into the public eye. When The Little Shoemaker was released in June of that year, it rose to number 7 on the UK singles chart. For a young artist who was still discovering the true meaning of fame, it was significant that it remained there for 12 weeks. Her producer, Alan A. Freeman, transformed the song, which originated in France, into something lively and memorable. It was heard everywhere. It even reached the top spot in Australia, demonstrating that she was more than simply a local hit. The money she made from the single, which was released by the Polygon label, enabled her to start transforming from a child actor into a well-known pop star. She was already a well-known voice in British homes by the end of Music 1954, and her career path was beginning to take shape. In December 1955, a year later, she was unexpectedly propelled even higher by There's a Valley. More than 200,000 copies were sold, and it peaked at number 9 in the UK. Not bad for someone in their mid-50s. On Sunday night, she sang it live in front of over 20 million people at the London Palladium. She quickly rose to fame as a teenager. The song's soft tone was ideal for her voice, and the widespread exposure elevated her to the status of one of Britain's best young female vocalists. Music, newspapers, wanted interviews. Her voice was repeatedly sought after by crowds and radio stations. With All My Heart, a new chapter began in early 1957. The song reached number 3 in the UK and held a unique distinction as she created the B-side herself. She began experimenting with symphonic music layers at Abbey Road Studios, where she recorded it, and these later influenced her style. The warm, lush production was a step up from the straightforward pop songs that were all over the market. She was learning quickly, creating more, and starting to envision a future based solely on. At about the same time, a daring event occurred. Chariot, the song that would eventually become I Will Follow Him, was the first French recording she made in 1956. As it went throughout Europe, it topped the Belgian charts. A British girl singing in French was out of the ordinary, if not dangerous. However, that didn't deter her. It demonstrated her ability to communicate with audiences in a way that went beyond language. She was traveling Europe by 1957, doing 50 performances with small orchestras in Paris and Brussels. She was welcomed by European audiences and became one of the few British musicians to achieve success on the continent prior to the Beatles. In 1957, Sailor followed. It became her first #1 in the UK. Even the imported Elvis Presley singles that dominated the stores were outsold by it. A unique photo shoot on a yacht cruising down the temperature sparked conversation and was covered by the newspapers. She was officially recognized as the highest charting British female artist of the 1950s after the song remained at the top of the charts for weeks. She was gradually demonstrating that she could succeed with any audience and wherever. There was more to her 1950s adventure than just music. Before devoting herself entirely to music, she acted in her last big movie, The Card, back in 1952. She had 5 singles annually from 1952 to 1958, and she was nominated for her first Ivory Award for songwriting. She was one of the few who could seamlessly transition from movie to music. She was one of the most powerful ladies in British pop by 1958, paving the way for others to follow. In 1960, at the age of 27, she relocated to Paris, and everything changed once more. She released Romeo, which sold 1 copy, after signing with Vogue Records France, 5 million copies, and made her the French version of La Petula. She was well known for her gentle British ballads till then, but everyone was taken aback by her music. French debut. She became a European celebrity, performing at locations like the Olympia Theatre and sharing the stage with Jack Bell and Charles Aznavour. The change was strong. She fell in love with Claude Wolff, whom she married in 1961, so it even permeated her personal life. She broke down linguistic barriers and became one of the most well-known musicians in Europe, thanks to her career in France. She published her upbeat music, French rendition of Lee Dorsey's song Ya Ya Twist in 1962. It held the top spot for 12 weeks in a row in France. Her intensity matched the twist frenzy sweeping Europe, and 15 million people watched her TV performance on Salut le Copain. She added an explosive yet softer tone to the dance atmosphere. The song even made it to the UK Top 20, something that French-language songs hardly ever do. She became France's best female vocalist of 1962 by winning the Grand Prix du Disque France. Then came more daring actions. She collaborated with Serge Lama on the French translation of Charlie Chaplin's This Is My Song, set Machans, in 1965. She was first hesitant to sing it. The straightforward lyrics, she worried, would overwhelm her earlier UK work. After being persuaded by Claude Wolff, she ultimately recorded it. The French version became the most popular in France. The English version sold more than 500,000 copies and peaked at #1 in the UK in February 1967. She thought the song dominated too much, but music records wanted more hits, which caused friction. Nevertheless, it was yet another huge accomplishment for her career. Her 1963 tour of Japan opened another door. She was the first lady from the West to perform at the Budokan. Martial arts competitions and important national events had been held on the stage. She won over Japanese audiences with her bilingual performances of English and French songs. Huge local stars like Hugh Sakamoto were outsold by her. In Japan, her CD Petula Clark rose to the top of the charts, and millions of people watched the TV shows. Her concerts exposed Japanese listeners to Western pop music, and her impact influenced the nation's musical preferences at a pivotal point. She recorded in Italian and Spanish in 1964, pushing the boundaries once again. Caoedro reached the top spot in Italy. She studied phonetically and spent the night learning the lyrics for studio sessions in order to rapidly match the languages. Among the tracks on her EPs, in Italian and Spanish, were Hello Dolly and Petite Fleur. She demonstrated to the world her ability to pick things up quickly and perform fluently in several languages. Few artists were able to accomplish that, particularly in the early 1960s. However, music success did not shield her from injustice. Even though she shared the same billing in 1962, French promoters paid her half of what they paid male artists such as Johnny Hallyday. Despite keeping letters that detailed the unequal treatment, she decided to keep up the effort in order to fortify her position in France. At the time, gender prejudice was prevalent in the entertainment industry, and her perseverance paved the path for later female musicians in Europe. Then came the downtown age. Music. Tony Hatch found the tune in Paris in 1964 and took it to her. She recorded it in 2 takes, music, at Pi Studios on October 16th, even though she initially thought it sounded too American. Minutes before the session, Hatch even completed composing some lyrics in the studio restroom. Jimmy Page and Big Jim Sullivan were among the more than 30 musicians on the song. The Beatles' song, I Feel Fine, was the only thing that kept it from reaching #2 when it was released in the UK. However, a more significant event occurred in the US. In January 1965, music peaked at #1 on the Billboard Hot 100. It was a UK female artist's first US #1 since 1952. Over 3 million copies of Downtown had been sold by the end of that year. She instantly became a worldwide celebrity. She appeared on The Ed Sullivan Show a few weeks later. She didn't rehearse for her Downtown performance on March 14, 1965. since she arrived just 45 minutes before the show. Approximately 50 million Americans watched. I Know a Place, her second single, became a top 10 smash. She was thrust into the center of the British invasion that night, making her one of the decade's biggest international stars. In the US, I Know a Place came in at number 3. Its message was motivated by the civil rights movement and youth culture. It alluded to a location where everyone could feel at home. To achieve the sound Tony Hatch envisioned, the song required a 40-piece orchestra. It felt larger than the majority of the songs of the time because of its depth. It struck a deep chord with young listeners, particularly in nations where racial tension was commonplace. A silent but impactful event occurred on live television on April 2, 1968. On her NBC show, Petula Clark and Harry Belafonte were singing a duet against war when she reached out and touched his arm. It was easy. It was soft. It didn't last long. Nevertheless, it was the first instance of a white woman touching a black guy on American prime-time television. Music, Chrysler, the sponsor, became alarmed as soon as they noticed it. They requested that the sequence be redone with them standing apart. They were afraid of irate calls from viewers in the South, but Petula declined. She was supported by her husband, who produced the performance. They preserved the moment. The nation erupted when the Snorts episode broadcast unaltered. The letters came flooding in. Some were quite complimentary. Others conveyed threats of death. Before learning that the executive who complained had behaved in a panic and against company policy, Belafonte even contemplated boycotting Plymouth cars on The Tonight Show. But the moment remained. Music. It became a civil rights milestone and broke a rule that had been in place for far too long. Petula published a song that sprang from a different music type of tension in April 1967, a year earlier. One of her greatest successes, Don't Sleep in the Subway, peaked at number 5 in the US. Music. She actually argued with Tony Hatch during a blackout in London, which gave rise to the idea. The song's lyrics cautioned against leaving a dangerous location after a disagreement by storming away. Hatch utilized the American definition of the word subway, which in the UK meant a pedestrian tunnel, to give the song a more expansive feel. Music, New York contributed to its further spread. The song was positioned in the center of the restless energy of the city thanks to a rainy Times Square billboard campaign. 3 of Hatch's melodies were used to piece the song together, which progressed from pop to orchestral sounds until ending with a lively chorus reminiscent of the Beach Boys. It was nominated for a Grammy in 1968, but Up and Away won. Nevertheless, it became her last U.S. top 10 hit and topped charts in Australia, demonstrating how popular she had become. She also continued to perform on stage. She played Mrs. Johnstone in the Broadway production of Blood Brothers in 1993. After she joined the cast, the show's first challenges were resolved. Reviews softened as crowds increased. She became one of the main pillars of the production, since she played the part with such emotional intensity. In 1994 and 1995, she accompanied the performance throughout its U.S. tour. However, she had begun her path to that point far earlier. She oversaw the London publication Petula in 1970, She did 300 one-woman shows and garnered praise for her work that was worthy of an Olivier Award. She had little trouble returning to the West End in following years. She demonstrated that she was more than just a pop sensation. She had a long breadth of expertise behind her and was a full performer. She entered Charlie Chaplin's orbit in a subsequent chapter. For his 1967 movie, A Countess from Hong Kong, he invited her to record This Is My Song. At first, she attempted to decline since she thought the English lyrics were too archaic. The studio pushed for English even though she wanted to record in French. Chaplin's obsession with perfection caused the sessions to drag on for months, delaying the song's release. She assumed it would go away. She even had success with it as an album tune, but against her desires, Pi Records published it as a UK single. It peaked at #1 in February 1967. It quickly rose to #4 in Canada and #3 in the US. Clark and Chaplin were drawn into the same chapter of music history when what began as a grudging effort turned into a global hit. Not every encounter was enjoyable. She met Elvis Presley in 1968 when she was performing in Las Vegas. He made an offer at a meeting in a private suite, which she promptly turned down. Later on, she said it was uncomfortable. Elvis had a reputation for pushing limits with women, frequently overcoming opposition with the help of his entourage. Petula left the room, avoiding eye contact. The pain of that incident plagued her for years, yet she remained professional. She made a daring choice that led to her Grammy victory. I Know a Place won her the 1966 Best Rock and Roll Recording Award, but she didn't attend the ceremony. Even when they were nominated for the same accolades, female performers were paid less than their male counterparts. She would not appear. Despite receiving little media attention, it became one of the first public protests against the gender pay disparity in the music business. Later, artists cited the decision as an uncommon act of defiance at a time when the majority remained mute. Particularly between the ages of 41 and 60, her career changed frequently. She was severely impacted by the disco craze that swept the U.S. in the early 1970s. Her 1971 song, I Don't Know How to Love Him, peaked at #13, but poor ticket sales forced the cancellation of her scheduled U.S. tours. She turned around since it was unexpected. In Australia and Asia, she shifted to cabaret and smaller club performances. She relied on intimate performances and jazz standards while touring Australia in 1972 with a small ensemble. A new chapter has begun. She sang to audiences who desired intimacy and storytelling rather than stadiums. She was able to reconstruct her route in her own way as a result of the change. She returned to British television in 1974 with Petula, a BBC variety show. There were 12 episodes in all. David Bowie made an appearance one evening as he was developing his sound as a young American. He arrived at a time when he and Petula were both embracing new incarnations of themselves, coinciding with his own artistic renaissance. Petrov, Telly Savalas, and the Pointer Sisters were also on her show. At a moment when she most needed it, it brought her back into the spotlight in the UK. In the 1980s, she made a comeback to the West End with the musical Someone Like You, despite having relocated to Geneva in 1966 to raise her family. She did more than 200 gigs at the Strand Theatre in 1984. The production successfully blended her new songs with her old classics. People were waiting in line. She received accolades from critics. She demonstrated that even at the age of 52, she was still capable of leading a West End play and captivating an audience. Then there was still another surprise. She put out a high-energy remix called Downtown Music 88 in 1988, which was created by Stock Aitken Waterman. It introduced her to fans of dance music and peaked at number 10 in the UK. A new generation became aware of her name after she advertised it on Top of the Pops. She reinvented herself at the age of 55. Behind the cheers, however, she continued to fight old battles. When her record Petula Clark's Hit Parade was reissued in 1975, she found that a U.S. company was paying her 40% less than male musicians for her music. She filed a lawsuit. Although the matter ended amicably, it became yet another early instance of a woman protesting unjust treatment in the music business. She sang Downtown and Don't Sleep in the Subway at the Royal Variety performance for Queen Elizabeth II in 1991. Her outfit glistening with 500 sequins. Millions of people observed. It turned out to be one of her final significant royal engagements, music and a beautiful occasion that encapsulated her status in British society. In 2000, at the age of 68, she made her Broadway debut as Norma Desmond on Sunset Boulevard. Before an unforeseen health issue prompted her to step back, she finished 15 preview shows. Her performance made an impression, even in terms of music. She went on to record the Studio Cast album in 2001, for which she was nominated for a Tony. She had always set her own pace, which was rare for someone her age. Music. She recorded Lost in You in Nashville in 2013 when she was 80 years old. The album combined elements of country music with her signature flair. Music. It had 12 tunes that combined her signature British sound with live Nashville musicians, and it charted in both the UK and France. It kept her devoted fans close while appealing to younger audiences. At the age of 82, she took the stage at Glastonbury 2 years later in 2015. Downtown, almost 100,000 people waited to hear. The audience roared when she sang it. The video became viral. Her appearance was even the subject of a BBC program. It served as a reminder to everyone of the longevity of her melodies. In 2024, she opened doors she had kept closed for decades with her memoir, Sprinkles on Top. She shared moments that fans had never heard, such as the startling admission that she had declined a Beatles duet in 1965 due to a scheduling difficulty. Because it combined music, her triumphs with her shadows, the book became a bestseller. People were eager to hear her own version of events. Her 90th birthday performance at the Royal Albert Hall in 2022 was another groundbreaking event. On stage next to her, holograms of her younger self materialized, forming timeless duets. The hall was packed with 5,000 people. Over 1 million people watched on the internet. Her legacy was transformed into something new by the combination of memory and technology. Then, a challenging year arrived. She needs surgery on her vocal cords after catching COVID in 2023. She dreaded losing her voice for the first time in her 80 years of performing. However, she bounced back. She returned to the European stage in 2024, singing with the same serene strength that had accompanied her throughout her life. She experienced both happiness and loneliness in her private life. On June 8, 1961, she wed Claude Wolfe, who oversaw her career for many years. Over time, their marriage changed. They remained married, raised their 3 children, and led different lives by the 1990s. She said the pain was great when Wolfe passed away on March 20, 2024, at the age of 93. She claimed she couldn't think of anything to say. The loss was exacerbated by their later years of silence. It made her confront the lengthy period of shared history that had gradually become a distant memory. Being a mother had its price. She made many flights between Geneva and Las Vegas throughout the 1970s. She made an effort to spend time with her kids, but the schedule kept getting in the way. She missed holidays and school functions. Her performances were subpar. Her time with her family suffered. She later acknowledged that she struggled with guilt all the time, trying to be everything at once, and frequently felt that neither side got enough of her. She was put to the test in darker ways by the music industry itself. In 1965, a producer pretended to be on business when he summoned her to a hotel room and then attempted to corner her. She got away. She was afraid of losing everything, so she said nothing. More pressure came with her reputation during the mid-1960s, including incidents like her meeting with Elvis, Presley in the dressing room that ended abruptly when his remarks became offensive. These incidents were a part of a larger trend that women in entertainment faced, where the only way to feel safe was to remain silent. She had previously experienced the pain of rejection years earlier. In 1945, at the age of 13 when the BBC rejected her music as unimportant following the war. She had provided amusement to soldiers during World War II, but as audiences moved on, she was ignored. She concealed her depression as a result of the loss. It influenced her cautious demeanor for many years. She battled secretly, despite the fact that her singing made millions of people happy and that Downtown sold over 70 million copies. She overcame years of hurt caused by betrayals in the industry and the dissolution of her marriage with the aid of therapy in the 2000s. She discovered how to create room for her in order to heal herself. The 1968 moment with Belafonte brought dangers once more after years of showcasing light for others. Strangers sent hostile notes and warnings following the show. Petula and Wolfe had already ruined 7 other takes when Chrysler and NBC attempted to push for a safer version. The historic touch persisted. After that, she went on tour with armed security. She was aware of the danger. Nevertheless, she opted for integrity. And she carried that decision with her for the remainder of her life, adding to a lengthy career molded by bravery, rebirth, and an unwavering voice.